All right, welcome to Torah Tuesday. Today we have Genesis 33 and 34, and we pick up the story just after Jacob's encounter with God. And he seems to be a new man after this encounter. As he moves toward Esau, courage has replaced cowardice as he strides ahead of his family to meet Esau. Humility takes the place of arrogance as he bows down 7 times before his brother. And penitence prompts him to attempt to give back the blessing out of which he had cheated Esau all those years ago. Did you notice that? He stole the blessing in chapter 28, and here he's trying to return the blessing to Esau. Jacob has been reborn out of his episode of wrestling with God, it would seem. And that may be surprising, but perhaps what's even more surprising is that Esau has changed too. Last we heard of him, he was just waiting out his father's death so that he could slaughter his deceitful brother. But now, the first we hear of him, he ran to meet Jacob, embraced him, fell down, kissed him, and they wept together. He's even reluctant to receive Jacob's gift, saying that he has more than enough wealth at home. He even invites his brother to join him at the land of Seir, his new homeland. It's a surprising encounter. It's an incredible encounter. This model of acceptance after such betrayal is a portrait of love like God's love. Jacob actually says that himself. He says when he is welcomed by Esau despite his betrayal, he says to Esau, "To see you is to see the face of God." So Jacob sees something of God's love for humanity in this encounter, this surprising encounter with Jacob. It's unexpected, surprising, breathtaking, and so comforting to read. Love for an enemy, one who so ruthlessly betrayed him, like a God who makes his enemies his friends through the same kind of unexpected, surprising love. And the story concludes with Jacob arriving in the land of Canaan, the land that was promised to his forefathers. And you hope that the next line will be, "And they all lived happily ever after." It's almost like it could be the end of the story at this point. Brothers are reconciled, he's back where he belongs, and they all lived happily ever after. But the next story is far, far from happily ever after. It's probably the worst story in the whole Genesis scroll. So let's get into Genesis 34. We're reminded that on top of having 12 sons, Jacob also has a daughter, Dinah. And she is the subject of this next story. This one is harrowing. If you've already read it, you'll know. So if you want to finish today's devotion on a cheery note, maybe you should pause now. Although I must say that the point of this story is still warming, even though that the subject of this story is just terrible. So Dinah, she is out with the local girls, and she is spotted by a man named Shechem. He's the son of Hamor the Hivite. So he's something of a prince in this area, which might be an explanation for some of his entitlement. He has a strong attachment for Dinah. Well, actually, before we're told that he takes her and he rapes her. And then we are told that he has a strong attachment to her. And he tells his father that he would like to marry this woman. So Shechem's father goes to negotiate with Dinah's father, Jacob. And now Jacob has heard about what happened to his daughter. He knows what happened. But the striking thing in the story is that he does nothing. In the subtle way that Hebrew narrative doesn't make a moral judgment, usually it wouldn't say anything, but it does cast some shade on Jacob as the father who doesn't care that his daughter has been raped. In contrast, Dinah's brothers, the sons of Leah, they hear about it and they are furious. Hamor, Shechem, Shechem's father says this marriage will be a very strategic move for the new family in Canaan. You'll be able to trade. We'll treat you like one of our own. And then Shechem chimes in at this point, and you notice in the dialogue that happens, Shechem chimes in and he basically pleads with them that they can have whatever they like as long as he can have Dinah as his wife. He's desperate. And just like their grandfather Laban back in chapter 28, Jacob's sons see this love obsession as an opportunity to take advantage. Remember back in chapter 28, Laban sees Jacob's love for Rachel and he seizes that as an opportunity to take advantage. That is exactly what Jacob's sons are doing here. The apple, as it happens in Genesis, does not fall far from the tree. They say, well, it would only be right for her to marry you if you were circumcised. And actually, not just you, Shechem, but all the males of your tribe as well. Now, Shechem and Hamor, they see this as good, and so they go down to the city gate to propose this to the other men. Imagine having to convince a bunch of other men that this is a good idea, that they should all get circumcised in their old age. So they propose it to the men, and then they sweeten the deal somehow. Verse 23, won't their livestock, their property, and all of their animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms, and they will settle among us. Basically, they say, we will become filthy rich if we will just circumcise ourselves. Now, did you notice that they didn't mention anything about the fact that Shechem can only marry Dinah if these men get circumcised? They hide the true motivation and they say, it's all about the benefit of the community. Anyway, the men agree, and so they are all circumcised. And this is where the men take advantage, the sons of Jacob take advantage. 3 days later, while the men were still recovering from their surgeries, Simeon and Levi take their swords and they wipe out all the men of the village. It was a trap. And the motivation for them was revenge for their beloved sister. Jacob didn't seem to care about their sister in the same way that Jacob didn't seem to care about their mother, Leah. And so, as if in retaliation for Jacob's lack of love, they acted. And the evil just piles on top of the evil. While there might have been some kind of twisted justice in what Simeon and Levi did, the other sons of Jacob come in like scavengers after the attack and they loot the village. They pillage all of the animals. They take the poor women and children as well. And Jacob, the story concludes with Jacob getting angry at his sons. Not because of their vengeful murder, not because of their looting or their pillaging, but because their actions might make him unpopular with the locals. This is what he says: you have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the people living in this land. And the brothers reply in a really sharp way. They say in reply to Jacob, should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Now, it could be that this is referring to Shechem treating Dinah like a prostitute, but it could also be that this is an aside comment about Jacob. Jacob is the one who is treating their sister like a prostitute. Because to do nothing about her rape and then to be willing to accept gifts for her is like the actions of a pimp. So that's it. That's the story. It's terrible. What could possibly be learnt from this story? Well, just like Abraham and Isaac before him, we see Jacob here failing to protect the women in his family. Remember Abraham, Sarah, the king of Egypt. Remember Isaac and Rebekah and Abimelech, the king. Here, like in previous generations, they are taken advantage of. And surprisingly here, as well as there, great wealth comes to the family through their cowardice. This story is another example of God's promise for goodness and blessing playing out through human depravity and chaos. God's blessing to this family occurs in the midst of so much human evil, because God's commitment to bring good out of chaos is here again. And this is a very, very confronting version of that. Now, there is lots more happening in this story that sets up the scene for the coming Joseph story in future weeks, but we'll get there into the future. Anyway, in the meantime, have a good day.